You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. You wanted it, you got it. A radio program that helps teach you options trading inside and out, basic to complex. This is Options Bootcamp. Whether you want to learn how to protect your portfolio, generate income, or even become a master of volatility, the Options Bootcamp drill instructors will break it all down for you. Now, let's get you into peak options trading shape. Here are your Options Bootcamp drill instructors.
All right, everybody. That music means it is time once again for Education Wednesday here on the old network time for everyone's favorite options education program. Yes, it is time once again for Options Bootcamp, what the cool kids call the old OBC. My name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the aforementioned network, reminding you we're pretty much available on every platform under the sun. If you haven't flipped on over and subscribed to the full network, first off, you're missing out on a whole heck of a lot of content. OBC is really just the beginning. You're just kind of dipping your toes into the waters here on the network. There's nearly a dozen other shows you could be checking out throughout the week, usually coming at you twice a day with content here on the network. And of course, if you want to dip your toes even deeper, dive on into the big pool, the Olympic size pool over there, and head on over to theoptionsinsider.com/secret club. That's where you could join. We had a great pro Q&A with JJ from TD Ameritrade, runs a lot of their options programs and platforms over there. And of course, Options Oddities every Friday. Just give our big giveaway for the January pro trading crate, working on the February one now. So all sorts of fun stuff going on over there. You can, of course, get us live throughout the week for this show and everything else that we do throughout the week. So there is an embarrassment of content, an embarrassment of riches over there. Theoptionsinsider.com is the place to go. And of course, if you listen after the fact, you're content getting yourself on demand. We just ask you, if you like what you hear, keep rating and reviewing. You could argue it is more important than ever. I mean, this January was 15 freaking years. So we got quite the backlog of reviews behind us. But these days, more important than ever with new folks discovering the show. So we ask you, if you like what you hear, keep rating and reviewing, just like this guy. This is my favorite handle of the week. This one comes from Apple Podcasts. Our 5-star review this week comes from Heroic Stoic. It just brings a smile to my face. I don't know why. Great handle there. And his title of his review is "Da Totes Magoats." He says 5 stars. D's, D-E-Z, guys, are the goats, all in capitals. And then in case you didn't know what he was talking about, he put in parentheses, the greatest of all time. The totes magoats. Well, thank you for that, Heroic Stoic. You certainly brought a smile to my face. Let's see if you brought a smile to the face of my compatriot. Of course, we are joined once again by the black-hatted one himself. He doesn't really smile that often. He's got that duster going. He's got the black-hatted cap. He's looking for some rating. He is none other than Mr. Dan Passarelli from Market Taker Mentoring, what the cool kids call Mr. P, welcome back to the program. How does it feel to be, quote, "da totes magoats"?
It feels pretty darn good, Mark. It feels pretty darn good.
That one brought a smile to my face, I will admit. I like how he spelled it out, too, just in case you didn't know what he was talking about. So good job there. Heroic stoic. As we keep on rolling, it is time for the old basic training.
All right, Boot, it's time to get in line. What you're going to do is learn. You're going to learn how options work. Do you hear me? Yes, you're going to learn options trading inside and out, basic to complex. There will be no failures. Do you hear me? Yes, pull in, print bear to learn.
All right, everybody, welcome to the basic training, the portion of the show where we break down some basic options, concept, or technique or strategy, explain how you can utilize it in your own accounts out there. And before we dive into that, really quickly, Mr. Dan, we are seeing some more tumult, some more interesting things going on out there on the screen. What is your take on what we're seeing out there from an overall market and vol environment? And indeed, a corollary to that, sir, what are you rating?
Well, Mark, it's funny you should ask. It's been a pretty interesting market for the past few weeks, really. As far as rating goes, we had a little tick up in Rocket today. It might be, starting to happen for Rocket. We just talked about this, on the last show or the one before that. So that's pretty darn exciting.
Yeah, you were all in on Rocket. I can't recall. What was your month in strike du jour, sir?
Right now I'm actually long the shares is what I am.
Stock. What the heck is that? Actually, it is somewhat appropriate for our basic training today, but you're right. Rocket taking a nice little pop, going from about 12.50 this morning to almost 13.40 today before giving up a little bit of that now. So yeah, interesting stuff out there. When we did our question of the week a couple weeks ago, but which of these beaten up meme names are you guys taking another look at? We didn't include Rocket, but we got a ton of write-ins for Rocket. So clearly you're not alone in your love for all things Rocket out there. But you mentioned stock, holding stock. We don't talk stock a lot on this show because the name of the show, after all, is Options Bootcamp. But we got an interesting question this week, and we thought it might be worth spending a little bit of time on the old underlying this week. This question comes in from Derek L. He says, "Hey, drill instructors." Well, hello, Derek. He says, "I'm new to the options game and loving me some OBC." Oh, well, glad we could welcome you to the warm and inviting world of options there, Derek. He goes on to write, "I saw this tweet today from the SEC, and I thought it would make a good discussion topic for the show. Can you explain exactly what this means and the impact it could have on options traders going forward? Thanks so much. You guys are literally," oh, in all caps, literally, "the best in the business." So, Dan, if you're playing the home game there, we have now been called on this show the Totes Magoats and literally in all caps, the best in the business. What say you, sir? You're getting a lot of love today.
Wow, I want to play that like Sally Field's Academy Award quick.
You love me. You really love me, or you like me, whatever she said. Yeah. Play it for your wife. She's like, "Look, people like me." She'll be like, "Who are these idiots who actually like you?" But yeah, good question here, Derek. And he actually includes a link to his tweet. And the SEC tweeted out, I don't have the date on this. Looks like it's pretty recent, though. He says, "Today we proposed rule changes to reduce risks in clearance and settlement of securities, including shortening standard settlement cycle transactions in securities from 2 business days after the trade date, aka T+2, to 1 business day after the trade date, T+1. And they have links to more of their circulars and everything along those lines. So as Derek wants to know, what the heck is this and what does this mean for options traders? So let's dial it back a little bit. Like I said, we don't talk about stock that often. We talk about options. You guys know about things like clearing. We mentioned that before. We've done some shows before on exercise and settlement and pin risk and all the different nuances that go on the option side when it comes to settlement. But guess what? Stock has a settlement process too. And I know that's kind of counterintuitive to a lot of people, especially who are newer to the markets now, because they're used to coming in, seeing a bid, maybe hitting it if they like it, lifting an offer. The trade goes up instantaneously, a fraction of a second, and you're filled. And most people don't give it a second thought. That's it. The trade is done. But from your broker's perspective and from your account's perspective, the journey has kind of just started there. And that's kind of what this is alluded to. So this is talking about the settlement process. I know, Dan, when we first got into the business, it was somewhere around T+5. Do you recall those crazy days, sir?
Yeah, it was T+5 back then. That's right.
That seems like an eternity now, does it not?
I know, man.
I mean, imagine waiting a whole week for this stuff to pretty much hit your accounts. What are we talking about here? Okay, T plus whatever, T plus X, T plus 1, T plus infinity. That is the time it takes to actually settle your trade. So let's say you go out, you buy your 100 shares of whatever the heck it is. For our purposes, let's say it's XYZ, a very popular name. Everyone loves to buy it and or sell it. In this case, we're going to buy 100 shares, a round lot. You buy it, you see it on your brokerage platform, whatever it is, Robinhood, TD, and you say, oh, it's offered at $50. I like it. I'm going to buy it. Bam, done. You lay out your $5,000 and you're like, okay, I'm done. I'm moving on to the next trade. I'm going to keep an eye on this, see if it ticks up or down, whatever you do with your stock once you own it. But your account's debited. And for your purposes, you might think, okay, I'm done with this bad boy. However, behind the scenes, you have kicked off another process, and that's what we're talking about here. Because once you hit that button, that is your trade date. That is T. That is what T is in this formula. Your trade date or your transaction date. And now you have to start counting, because that's what it means for the actual settlement process to occur. That stock actually has to go through this settlement process to turn you into a shareholder of record. That is when you actually will have the actual ownership of these shares transfer into your account. Like I mentioned, when Dan and I first got into this business, it was an eternity. You'd buy a stock on a Monday, you got to wait all week, T+5 pretty much, for you become a shareholder of record, the actual shares to be transferred into your account. And it could vary depending on the asset class, right? Of course, you're talking about options. They settle a lot faster these days. They're down here already in the T+1 zone, and they have been for some time. And that's kind of what the SEC is alluding to. They're saying, hey, we're going to get stock and move it into the modern era and actually get us into the T+1 zone as well. So yeah, let's go back to our couple of examples here. Let's go back to what it is right now, which is T+2 on most of the platforms. Like I said, when Dan and I got in the business, it was T+5. I quickly switched to T+3. Then it kind of hung out at T+3 for a while. Then it went to T+2. And now we're looking at finally making this step into having your trades and everything clear within a day, which is nice. So let's say, in our example, XYZ is T+2 settlement, which is what you're going to encounter everywhere. You come in, you buy your XYZ on a Monday, and then like I said, you got to count 2 days out. So your actual settlement date will be Wednesday. And that's, of course, assuming there are no weekends or public holidays in between that trade date and the settlement date. If there are, it's going to take longer. Those days don't count. If you did it on a weekend, let's say you came in on a Friday and you bought your XYZ then, you get debited right away, so they don't hold out on the money. They come for your money right away. But your quote-unquote status as a shareholder of record in XYZ won't actually be entered into the books until Tuesday. So that is that Friday. Nothing happens on the weekends. Those don't count. And then you start counting on Monday. +1, +2 would be Tuesday. If it was a long holiday weekend, so let's say you're talking whatever, Memorial Day, President's Day, something like that, where Monday's a holiday, then you're talking not until Wednesday. Because again, nothing happens on weekends or public holidays when the markets were closed. That's pretty much what we're talking about here. Dan, you have any thoughts here on the SEC finally, hopefully, moving stock land into the modern era and getting T+1, sir?
Yeah, I think it's a really great idea. I mean, the reason why it was T+5 for, like centuries or whatever it was, is because like they would literally have to collect the order, tickets, confirmation tickets, and bring them to the office and process it, and send it to the clearinghouse, and then send some kid with a stack of stock certificates to, another broker. And it would literally take 5 days. To me, it's weird that it would spend 2 days. And I think there's going to be some advantages there because, there has been some talk and speculation, and I don't know how much truth there is to it, but that, back with a lot of the early meme activities, that some of the stockbrokers, like when people would buy shares or short shares or whatever, that the stockbrokers didn't actually, like get delivery or take delivery on time. And it just opened things up to like a lot of extra systemic risk. And so I think that it seems to me that the less time for the actual settlement to happen, the less room for, just less slippage,
Yes, we are in this world. Remember when we first got to the floor, Dan, remember that whole thing of going out and settling up your out trades on the weekends and the next day? And it was the notion of coming in with this giant stack of paper and then going into the pit and saying, hey, do you know this trade? And you're like, oh, I thought it was an 8 lot. You say it's a 50 lot. That kind of nonsense, that seems so antiquated now, does it not? And this delayed settlement process is something akin to that, Dan.
Yeah. I mean, super antiquated, with like cryptocurrency where you can like send money, like actual money around to the, some little village in Kenya in like a couple of minutes. It just, and there are no paper stock certificates anymore. Like it just seems to me that they ought to be able to figure out a way to lower the settlement date time.
Yeah, you bring in a thing like crypto, you're right. And that crypto traders having to wait for their settlement, it's going to blow their mind, right? So yeah, there's a lot that needs to be done behind the scenes to modernize the infrastructure, the plumbing, if you will, of the modern financial system here in the U.S. So what are some of the things you have to be aware of out here? We talked about weekends already. Those don't count. Holidays don't count. Settlement comes into play a couple of areas. Usually dividends is where you see the biggest impact for these. Remember, you have to be the shareholder of record in order to get the dividend. That's why we could talk about the ex-div dates and all those other types of things. That's what those are factoring in. Those are factoring in. If you come in and buy the stock the day of the dividend, guess what? You don't have time for that trade to settle. You are not a shareholder of record, so you get no dividend. So you have to have those trades in by that ex-div date in order to receive the dividend. And that's one of the probably more demonstrable impacts that you will see from this. It will make it easier for people to access those dividends without having to, wait a minute, what is the settlement time here? Is this T+2? Is this T+1? Is it T+3? What is this? And when am I going to actually be able to get this dividend? So minimizing that time and minimizing the headaches around dividends is probably going to be the biggest impact here for stock traders and for options traders overall. Dan, was that your takeaway as well? Probably the biggest impact for most of your clients?
Yeah. Yeah, I would absolutely say that. I mean, to be honest, like for most aspects of trading, this is pretty much just like sort of a background issue, like something that you'll never even think about. If I sell a cash secured put and it gets put to me and I get assigned and I own the shares, like as soon as I get the message and I see the shares in my account, like in my mind, like I own the shares. Technically you don't actually have them, but I mean, like you do. Like if the stock goes down, you lose money. If the stock goes up, you make money. So I mean, you have ownership, you have control of them, but like they're not like technically there. So I don't know, like it's a very interesting conversation, and it does really matter for a lot of things, like kind of behind the scenes in the industry, for just systemic safety of our whole, financial system. But yeah, I would say for a lot of traders, it's pretty much details. As long as you know when the X date is, you're fine.
You're right. They're talking about those shares hanging out in your account after the put gets put to you. That's the one thing we have lost in all this modernization, Dan. Now that options are settled pretty quickly, stock's going to be settled even faster. You no longer get those free days of flow. You used to get 2 or 3 free days when, let's say, the put was assigned and was put to you on a Friday. You had a few days there where you had the stock in your account, but you didn't really need to have the capital to pony up there right away until everything was settled up. And so you had a few free days, a little bit of a free swing at the bat, if you will, for the stock. Now, obviously, that could go against you. The stock could plummet, but you also could have the stock rally. And as you mentioned, you didn't need to have all the funds in your account yet, but you got the benefits of owning that stock. So if it rallied for a few days, you got a few free days of extra swing at the bat before maybe you decided you didn't want the stock or whatever the case would be. So Dan, unfortunately, the days of that fun loophole are behind us. You can't really play the game anymore, Dan. So that's probably the one downside to all of this.
Yeah, I mean, it is one downside. But I mean, that's a game you don't want to be playing anyway. Like if you don't have the cash, you shouldn't. Yeah, it's a game you really don't want to be playing anyway.
No, I said that mostly tongue in cheek. We don't want our listeners to be out there doing it. Yeah, back in the early days of my options trading, my personal accounts, I may have taken advantage of that loophole once or twice back in the day. But yeah, before you get all excited about, hey, this is a big change that's going to happen to my stock positions, we just had JJ from TD Ameritrade on our Pro Q&A yesterday. He kind of talked about this a little bit as well. And he said, unfortunately, it's not happening until 2024. So who was this? Derek L. Unfortunately, Derek L. and everybody else who's concerned about this, interested in this, not going to really see the ramifications of this for a couple more years in your account. But it's good to know the big stock world, the big financial markets are moving towards a more modern infrastructure where we can expect trades to trade and settle within a reasonable amount of time. I think people would love to have them be instantaneous. Now we know where the funds are coming from. We know this is an issue that's been going on with options open interest for a while. Why can't they update options open interest more frequently than once every 24 hours? We match up the trades pretty much instantly. The days of having to wait for an out trade for a day are kind of gone. So we can update that stuff more frequently if we want. It's just a question of getting the infrastructure there. So there's a lot of other areas that could use a little bit more modernization, but I'm glad to see that the stock world is finally getting up there. So I get it. Stock settlement, not exactly the sexiest of things out there. But Dan, you'll be happy to know while we were talking about the sexy world of stock settlement that I got an alert on my screen for some reason that the micro mini skirt is now dominating New York Fashion Week. So that's a little bit sexier maybe than settlement. Just a little bit, Dan.
I have not been reading my People magazine subscription.
Someone on this computer clearly has. So yes, that's my alerts that I'm getting during the show. So if I seem a little bit distracted, it's because of all these micro mini skirt pictures flying at my face. As we keep on rolling, listeners, it is time for you folks to take the reins. It is time for the mail call.
Mail call. Time to look at questions submitted by our listeners.
All right, everybody, let's do it. Let us commence your mail call. First, let's pay off some of the questions we've been asking you folks. We asked you guys last week if you had to buy a 10% out of the money call expiring on December 31st in one of the following names, which one would it be? Would it be Peloton, Facebook, Robinhood, or the old standbys of your S&P 500? We don't care the flavor. SPY, SPX. Pick your poison. And Mr. Dan, I was kind of surprised by the results of this, especially given where we are right now, how topsy-turvy these markets have been. We've seen a lot more red on the screen this year than maybe a lot of our newcomers to the markets are used to over the last couple of years. And yet, in spite of all that, nearly 42%, 41.9% chose SPX and SPY, 30.2% chose Facebook, and then we had 15.1% for Peloton, only 12.8% for Robinhood, a name that's been pretty beaten up. Dan, are you surprised that so many of our listeners are just going old school SPY, SPX, and expecting a nice 10+% return before the end of the year?
Yeah, I mean, I am a little bit surprised, TBH. I mean, you look at some of these names, and Facebook, everybody loves to hate Mark Zuckerberg, and I'm kind of with the majority there. And then Robinhood has gotten a lot of hate from a lot of the young Reddit investors, especially. Love and hate. We call it a love-hate relationship. Peloton, though, they had that Mr. Big business. I don't know. Like it's pretty surprising that Yeah, it's pretty surprising somebody just didn't jump on some of these really beaten up stocks. I mean, a 10% recovery. Yeah, I'm surprised.
Yeah, I was definitely surprised that we wouldn't see maybe a little bit more love for our hood. Certainly Peloton, you're right, has had a lot of headlines of late. That moved 10% over the course of the week. So you could maybe reasonably expect the 10% move in that one more than the S. But yeah, people liking themselves the S. Did you vote? Did you not vote? Do you agree with those thoughts, listeners? Hit us up. Let us know. Yeah, Facebook's been beaten up to high heaven, and yet no love there either, which is kind of interesting. This week, we're asking you a kind of related question, given your love for all things index. We said, we had the Super Bowl, obviously the big game on Sunday. According to the quote-unquote Super Bowl indicator, and again, I don't put a lot of stock in these things, but they are kind of silly, and a total combined score of only 43 points in the big game, which was the score this week, that foreshadows a weaker year in SPY and SPX. So we asked you guys, are you guys buying what the Super Bowl indicator is selling? Quite simply, how are you guys positioning right now in your broad S&P portfolio, given the fact that most of you obviously still think we're due for 10% or more in the S, or maybe you're buying this Super Bowl indicator, think it'll be a weaker year, sub 10%. We gave you 4 choices. You're just hanging out long SPY or the S right now, or you're long SPY calls, maybe some verticals, or the old stock substitution, or maybe you're long SPY, but with the put in your back pocket for a rainy day, or other. And once again, if you're going to do the other, listeners, you got to hit us up with your suggestions. Why we do it. We love to hear what your thoughts are on the other. Mr. Dan, this went live yesterday. What do you think is leading the dance right now, sir?
Well, I mean, it's a it's a pretty absurd observed correlation here for sure. I mean, you could pretty much correlate anything if you want. If you're doing this.
Are you poo-pooing the Super Bowl indicator, sir? How dare you?
I am a little bit. Yeah, I am a little bit. I mean, for me, well, hey, look, I said beginning of the year, a half a quarter ago, that this was going to be probably a volatile sideways, at least first half of the year. And that's what we've been getting. I mean, for me, I'm still long the market, pretty fully, and that's just because I'm in it for the long term. I mean, it's pretty hard to really time the market, and so yeah, I mean, I plan on just sort of riding it out. If the market gets up really high and the volatility really drops off, I will buy some puts and that kind of thing, and I've done some of that this year. And if it gets down real low, I do have a little bit of cash that'll probably, add to the kitty there. But
so you're voting for the old school long the underline.
I'm voting for the old school long the underline.
Twice in the same show, you've talked about the stocks. Sir, what is this? Is this stock boot camp, sir? Is that what you're doing here? Dan Passarelli's stock boot camp, or in this case, ETF boot camp.
Well, I mean, to be clear, I'm looking at this question is sort of must be viewed through the lens of long-term investing, because I mean, at any given situation, in my trading account, I mean, I might be overall long deltas, might be overall short deltas, might be delta neutral, beta weighted. That's just a whole different scenario. So yeah, I mean, I'm only looking at that through the lens of what's my IRA say?
Let's see what our audience is saying right now. And you guys are long SPY, but with a put in your back pocket. So maybe a little bit spooked out there right now. Nearly half of you, 45%, are going with that option right now, which is interesting. So you're saying pshaw to Dan's long SPY, and then long SPY calls or stock substitution getting 25%. I could certainly see that one right now. And then a tie for third with long SPX or SPY and the other. And again, you guys are all choosing other. You're not 15% of you. I got to get more of those. What your other is. Maybe Iron Fly. What the hell are you up to out there? That's why we put the other there. We want to hear from you folks. But yeah, interesting results right now. You guys agree, disagree? At Options is the place to go to make your voice heard. Let's go on to this one from MMT. MMT says, do you think that we'll have tradable financial instruments? So this kind of goes back. We were talking about Super Bowl here. Tradable financial instruments on sports teams, similar to what we have now on stocks, I'm talking mostly about the options. How great would it have been to buy a straddle on the Super Bowl score or a call on your favorite team? I think this would blow the floodgates open for new traders coming to the options market. Yeah, that would be awesome. I agree. Unfortunately, MMT and everyone else who's asked similar questions over the years, we're still a long way away from that from a regulatory perspective. I know you're just flooded with ads these days for your DraftKings and your FanDuels and just about every other betting platform under the sun. So it seems like sports betting is all the rage and pretty much legal across the board. And yet it still very much is a state-by-state process. If you can even use, like, for example, here in Illinois, you still can't even go set up a DraftKings account without driving to, I think it's East St. Louis to make a deposit 5 hours away. So there's a lot of idiotic nonsense like that. So you have state-by-state jurisdictions on the sports betting side. Then you have SEC on the broad financial side saying, no, no, no. And so until the regulators, the big federal regulators, can really come to grips with this and figure out a way to make it make sense, it's going to be some time. That's really where the delay is. I'm sure we had, like I said, we had JJ from TD on our Pro Q&A yesterday. We talked about something similar there. And, they would, sure, TD would love to have your business on that. That's a ton of money, right? The folks at Nadex, they were on our network for years. They've had binary options on a lot of event type products. They would love to have something along the lines of political or sporting type products. And yet the regulatory framework just isn't there yet. I mean, there are some, you mentioned the financial instruments, there are some things you can do. Like you can go out right now, it's the off season, and you can buy a future and just about any NFL team you want, for example, on most of these betting platforms. Now, it's not maybe like a future you're used to seeing. It's kind of just one price, take it or leave it. There's not really a bid and an offer. You can come in, lift offers, hit bids, work them in the middle. There's no real series of market makers out there maintaining liquidity in this stuff. There certainly is no option on that. Now, that said, you could do like the over-under on Super Bowl, right? So if you buy the over, it's kind of like you have a call on the score. It's like a synthetic call. So you could do little things like that. But you're right. We're not there yet with the depth of the instruments, let alone the liquidity that we would need to make something like this happen. I agree. It would be cool. It would blow the doors off for people coming to trade options. And yet I don't see any, they're still coming to grips with crypto. So sports betting and integrating that into the financial ecosystem, I think, is a little bit down the road. Dan, what do you have to say for this? I'm sure people have come to you over the years at MTM with questions along these lines. What do you have to say for MMT and the others who want to be able to trade options on their favorite football team, for example?
Yeah, I mean, if you're into that thing, it would be kind of cool. I don't know. I would have a hard time seeing any like actual exchanges like the CBO or something getting behind that. I mean, to be fair, in some ways it would be to their advantage because it would be a nice little sandbox training ground to bring options even more into the mainstream and make them clearly understandable. It would ultimately drive a ton of volume. But I mean, options are permitted by the SEC because they have an economic purpose, because you can hedge with them. Whereas options on sports teams, I mean, that's just purely another way of gambling. So I would think that the exchanges would shy away from it, and I would think that the SEC would not get involved. Now, that's not to stop some, DraftKings or something like that, some company like that from basically starting it in a completely independent manner. I mean, it could be interesting. It could be really interesting.
DraftKings posting notices, we're looking for market makers on our NFL options. How cool would that be? That would certainly be something interesting. Our chat here saying, Age of Delaquare saying, it's interesting that sports betting and marijuana are two industries which could explode once all these regulations get standardized. Yeah, that is definitely the case. They are kind of on the cusp. Unfortunately, for a variety of reasons, their regulators tend to move at the speed of molasses. Unlike, for example, look at how long it took to get stocks to T+1, and it's still not happening until 2024. So if they came out today and announced, hey, we're going to have options on your favorite sports teams, it probably wouldn't go into effect until 2025 at the earliest out there. You mentioned SIBO. Let's get out of here on this one, Dan. Let's go from this one from Kyle. Kyle says, what's the deal with those no multiplier options? Who's making them? Where do I get them? Robinhood? Question mark. And are you guys already trading them? Any thoughts? All right, a lot to unpack there, Kyle. You are referring, I assume, to the nanos. Those are the no multiplier options that have been announced, not by Robinhood, but by the exchange Dan was just talking about, the SIBO. And they are coming on March 14th. So set your calendar for those. So they're not available yet, so you didn't miss anything. So no, Dan and I are not already trading them. Where can you get them? Hopefully you'll get them on your brokerage platform of choice. That said, like I said, we just had JJ, who kind of oversees all the option stuff for TD, which is kind of the biggest platform under the sun right now. Remember, TD has the legacy Thinkorswim and TD options platforms. Plus, it just got gobbled up by Schwab's. They have the legacy Schwab options platform and Options Express. You're talking 4 major options platforms now combined into one. So to say they're the big dog is not really surprising anybody out there. And I asked him, because we were talking about these, I said, are you getting a lot of interest in these from your clients even know about these things? He's like, yeah, no, nobody knows about these things. No one has asked about them. No one's aware of them at all. So if the juggernaut, the 800-pound gorilla in the space, TD, if they're not seeing any customer interest in these, that's not to say Robinhood can't run with these and maybe make a go of them. I think SIBO's doing something maybe with Webull. I think they were talking with those guys. I think they had an announcement or something. One of those other brokers, I think. So hopefully they're becoming to your brokerage platform of choice. Any thoughts? We have talked about these before. I don't know, Dan, have your thoughts on nanos changed at all now that we have a concrete date, which is March 14th? And what do you think about his other questions? Like, where do you think he's going to be able to get these things?
Yeah. So I have from the beginning said that the nanos probably are a really good idea if they get the marketing right. And people don't think about exchanges having to market products, but they really do. Like, there's some history of great marketing of products that really took off, and lousy marketing of products that never took off, and it didn't necessarily have anything to do with the merit of the product. Like in marketing in general, there's they say, well, you build a better mousetrap and, people come and buy it. It's not true at all. It's all about the marketing of it. So I would think and I would hope that the SIBO, the clearing firms, well, probably all the exchanges, the clearing firms, OCC, brokerages are, all on the same page, getting messages out, making it available universally right out of the gate. And if that happens, I do think it's going to take off. I really do.
I agree with you on the marketing front. And you have nanos. Don't you want to promote those? No one knows about these things unless you're deep in the weeds like us, Dan, and some of our hardcore listeners. You have no idea what these things are. And yet, for whatever reason, you're right. They don't seem like they're putting any muscle behind promoting these things at all. So yeah, that's a weird one. We'll have to wait and see how but so far, yeah, given the fact that it's kind of just a trickle, I don't expect to be a huge groundswell of interest in these nanos when they launch.
Wasn't it? It was a few years back. They had each option was 10 shares for some of the minis.
Yeah, the minis, yeah. And that all blew up in their faces, yes. They swear it's not going to happen this time. They swear they have, because that blew up for a lot of reasons. They tried to game the system, charge full commissions for a 10th size product. The customers are not idiots. The liquidity wasn't there because the market makers didn't support them. So it was a huge disaster. I've asked them that. They've said, we've taken care of all that this time. So we shall see. By the way, our chat, one person, Options Queen, said she's interested in the nanos. So that's one vote for the nanos. And before we go, Unlimited wants to know, are you guys more excited for nanos or for SPX going daily? Well, I think for my purposes, I am really, SPX daily, that's cool. I'm excited by that. But to see if these nanos live or die, that's kind of fascinating to me, because these are options without any of the optionality you've come to expect, right? There is zero leverage in these things now. So can an option thrive that really isn't a traditional option anymore? That's kind of the big question. So Dan, as we get out of here, what are you more excited for? SPX going daily or the nanos?
I mean, I'm excited for both, but I would say probably SPX going daily, because once that happens, that'll lend itself to, spiders going daily and, that whole complex and probably then into some of the bigger, more active names like Apple and Tesla and NVIDIA, all that stuff. So, well, yeah, I think that those are some pretty exciting innovations.
And people want to hit you up about your own exciting innovations in the world of rating, Dan. Where should they go? What should they do?
Well, you can always make your way over to markettaker.com. And, by the way, I hope to see many of you in our summer retreat, which is in Sonoma Valley. That is June 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. If you have some questions about that, you can surf your way on over to our website and just contact me and ask, and I'll tell you all about it. Or I believe you can also go to the website markettaker.com/retreat. There's some information on that sign-up page as well.
I don't retreat. I'm always moving forward, sir. There's no retreating here on the old option. But if you want to be a coward and retreat with Dan to Sonoma Valley, drink some wine, markettaker.com. 2 T's is the place to go to learn more. You don't have to go anywhere. If you want more Q&As, man, we must love you folks, listeners. We're giving you so many chances to have your questions answered this week. Why? Because it's a special occasion today, listeners. It is the 400th episode extravaganza for OPR. So we have dragged Brian kicking and screaming. Is going to be answering your questions live for a full hour today, coming up starting at 3:30 p.m. Central. And because it's a party, we're going to open it up far and wide to all takers. So get in there. If you're listening now, set your clocks, set your dials for 3:30 p.m. I will put out the links on Twitter and everyone else as well, so everyone get a chance to get at Brian. Of course, your Secret Club folks always bump to the top of the list. If you have questions, start sending them in. Should be a fun one. That's the second half of our Education Wednesday, listeners. So again, if you're not subscribed to the network, you're missing out on OPR. At the very least, you should be listening to that show. That's kind of our sister educational program. So stay tuned for that. Options Playbook Radio, 400th episode spectacular, coming up in a little less than 2 hours now. Tomorrow, of course, episode 2 of the Option Block, as well as TWIFA. Where will we go on the futures options front? That should be fun. Friday ball views, all you Secret Club cool kids after that for oddities. What mischief will we get up to on that episode? Who knows? How much will it cost me? Who knows? Will the Rock Lobster hold on to the things he buys or dump them immediately? Who knows? We shall find out. Then back again, actually not on Monday. I do believe we have a holiday coming up next week, so not on Monday for President's Day, but back on Tuesday for a great pro Q&A, and then back again on another episode of Options Bootcamp. We'll see you then.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.